Okay. Can everyone see that? Can anyone not see
Yeah,
that?
see it.
Okay. You guys can see it. Okay, good. All right. So this is just how you go about crafting a college essay. So first things first, I know this is super cliche, but I just like to tell everyone to relax. I know it's really stressful. And obviously I'm not downplaying the importance of essays. They're actually really important and have become even more important since 2020 when COVID began because as I'm sure most of you are aware, a lot of schools have dropped standardized test requirements. Some schools, like the University of California system, they won't even consider them. UW doesn't look at them anymore. So there are fewer ways to distinguish yourself. So essays are definitely important. But the reason I say relax is because there are a lot of ways to go about writing an essay, and there's no one specific topic or way to do it that's, the right way. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna just walk you through kind of the elements of a successful essay. So it's really different from what a lot of students are used to doing in high school, where it's like you use evidence or data to back up a claim, and you have CER, it's a claim, evidence, reasoning. So that's exactly the opposite of what you want to be doing with these essays. These essays are narrative essays, and so they're personal stories, but they're not just stories. They're stories that show how, like, who you are as a person, how your mind works, who kind of like what motivates you, what your values are. Obviously, you can't do all of those things in one essay, so you don't need to be panicking. It's a story, but it's a deeper than just a story. You want the story to say something about you. So you might talk about how an event or a person or thing influenced you. And the best way to do this is through small moments. So a lot of you, I know my kids, some of my kids went to Bryan Elementary, and they did something there called Writer's Workshop. So if any of you remember that experience, it was like you focus on a small moment. So for example, you might come back after summer and your second grade teacher might say, they wouldn't say write about your summer. They would say write about one moment in your summer when you felt happiness. And so you might then write about going to an ice cream, shop on vacation with your grandparents, and they let you get the flavor. They let you get, like the sprinkle cone, which your parents never buy. And you just zero in on that one tiny moment. So that's the same kind of thing. You're not trying to give a rundown of your resume or an overview of all the things that make you amazing. You want to focus on one specific aspect of your character or an interest that you have. So often one of the most difficult parts is really choosing what you want to write about. But basically you really want to narrow your focus. There's no way that you can cover everything about yourself in one essay. So you really want to just pick something that you really feel energized about conveying to the admissions committee. And the best essays show some sort of change. It doesn't need to be like monumental change, like I was this way and now I'm completely this way, but you want to kind of start at point A, and you want to show that you have matured or developed in some way. So whether it's like your thinking has changed, your attitude has changed, your outlook, your perspective, something has changed about you by the time you finish reading the essay. And that's, that shows growth. So that's something that you really want your essay to reflect. And then often that changes is your theme. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So when you're trying to figure out a topic, It's not rocket science. One, a really obvious thing to do is take out a piece of paper or take out your phone or your computer and just start free associating. So think about things that really matter to you, experiences, activities, people who are important to you, places that mean a lot to you. If there's a defining character trait that you feel is really central to who you are, or if people would ask your group of friends, like, how would you describe Bonnie? Like, what would they say about what would they say about you? And you just kind of want to like free associate and just start writing that stuff down. So you start you start just kind of getting getting a list of things that might be fodder for a good essay. Now some of you may know this, some of you may not. I'm gonna walk you a little bit through how things have changed since those parents who were on the call applied to college. So back when I applied to college, there were paper apps that really limited the number of colleges you would apply to unless you kind of had a death wish. It was a lot of work to fill out all your biographical and demographic information on each application and write separate essays for each college and send them off and, with stamps and gather your transcripts. Well, so there's something called the Common Application, which is known as the Common App. And that has really revolutionized college admissions in ways both good and bad. So the good part is that you have just one core essay to write now. So schools that are members of the Common App, and most schools, the majority of schools are, there are a couple of notable exceptions. Until 2 years ago, UW was a notable exception, but they joined the Common App last year. So that's really great news for people in Seattle, because a lot of Seattle students do want to apply there. Georgetown does not accept the Common App. There are a handful of others, but Georgetown's really the biggie. Most schools accept it. So the good news is that you can write one essay, and that can go out to all the schools that you're applying to, assuming that they're members of the Common App. Now, some of these schools, especially the more selective schools, will have supplemental essays. Some of them will have lots of supplemental essays. Some of them may just have one. Often a supplemental essay, it could be something like, why Carleton College? And that's a very common one. But there are also really arcane examples, like write a letter to your, this isn't that arcane, it's not a good example of being arcane, but Stanford has a roommate essay where you write a fictitious letter to your would-be roommate. Sometimes they'll ask you, other schools will say, if you could have witnessed any moment in history, what would it have been and why? So those are kind of like a little more out there. University of Chicago is known for just the weirdest of the weird. They have you submit the Common App essay to them, and then they have another full-length essay with just really, really strange, like it'll say, the students come up with the prompts, like current students. And so it could be like, what is the meaning of pi? And you have to write 600 words about that. Anyway, just so it's just all over the map. And then some schools don't have any supplemental essays. So once you write this one core essay, you're done. So the way the Common App works is there are over 700 colleges who are members. And then there are 7 essay prompts. You only have to choose one. Oftentimes people will think, oh my God, I have to write 7 essays, but you do not. And your essay cannot exceed 650 words, which is really not a lot. It's if you are trying to tell a complete story, a narrative, let the admissions committee get to know you. It's 650 words is not a lot of space to do that. So you have to be very strategic in your writing. Okay, so these are the current, the prompts for this upcoming year. They've stayed the same for, I think, about 3 or 4 years, with the exception of number 4, which was new back in 2021. And so some of them are kind of creative, and some of them are more exactly what you would expect. Like the first one is, if you have a background or an identity or a talent that's so meaningful that you feel like you absolutely can't write your essay without talking about this one thing, then that is the prompt for you. Then number 2 is another really common one. Talk about obstacles or challenges and how you overcame a failure or a challenge and what did you learn from that experience. Number 3 is talking about challenging a belief or idea. That's not just kind of, oh, because you just, you have a very, a personality that like kind of goes against the grain, but it would be like, one time I had a student write about his grandfather, and this student had 2 moms, and his grandfather didn't believe in gay marriage. So he wrote about not like a political essay about why he believed in the right for to gay marriage, but he wrote about his relationship with his grandfather and how he was able to, how he struggled to love him and to form a connection with him because of this, really big obstacle standing in their way, but how they kind of both worked together and grew to come to this kind of mutual respect in terms of the boy challenging what his grandfather thought. Number 4, I've never had a student write about this one, but I think it's a really cool prompt. So it's about gratitude, based on, lots of science that shows if you tap into gratitude and thankfulness, that it's good for you. It's good for your soul. It's good for your happiness as a person, for the happiness of others around you. So I think this is kind of like one of those, if you know, if you have an idea that fits into this prompt, like, it, but I haven't had anyone hit on something that falls into this category so far. 5 is a really, really popular one. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and an understanding of yourself or others. So that is super broad, and a lot of things can just fall under that umbrella. And then number 6 is describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that you just truly cannot, you can't focus. You just lose track of time. You could spend hours and hours on it. And then the 7th is just really write about whatever you want. So that, interestingly, I don't have a lot of students choose number 7 because, as it turns out, so many things that people want to write about end up falling pretty neatly into one of these other categories. But in the case that you really have something to write about that doesn't fit into any of these categories, you're in luck. You can just write about, anything that you want to write about. Okay, then this question, there's a COVID-19 question on the Common App, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I think it's really important, especially the class that's graduating now is the class that was first impacted by COVID. So for all of you students who are listening to this, most of you are probably juniors or parents of juniors, and you really don't want to write your main essay about the impact of COVID. That's why the Common App added this COVID question. So it says, it's at the bottom, COVID-19 has affected students in dramatically different ways. If you need it, the COVID-19 and natural disaster question in the additional information section is it available for you to describe the impact. So that is the appropriate place to talk about if you had a mental health crisis because of the pandemic, during the pandemic, if your parent had a job loss, if you couldn't connect to the internet and your school experience was miserable. Anything related to the impact of COVID, you want to really make sure that you put it in this section and you don't want to use your Common App. There are things that are, everyone has something that is just more interesting and more unique about them to write about rather than writing about COVID. So that's just a lot of times people want to write about that. And it's like, no, everyone has a story of how COVID impacted them. And if you have a story that you feel you want to tell, then you do it in this specific place. So I think they give you 250 words to talk about that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the UW since a lot of people apply here. So as I mentioned, as of last year, UW is now a Common App school with one really, really important distinction. You cannot choose any of these 7 prompts. They actually have a special prompt that you have to answer, and it's none of the Common App prompts. So they keep the prompt that they used to use when they were a coalition school. The coalition is a competitor to the Common App, and this tell a story from your life describing an experience that either demonstrates your character or helped to shape it. That is a prompt straight from the coalition application. And UW likes it so much that they decided to continue to require that prompt, require that students answer that prompt, even though they're now a Common App school. So I know that's a little confusing. And it can be a little off-putting because you're like, oh God, I have to write. How many essays do I have to write? But as I note here, this prompt is, it intersects pretty closely with Common App prompts 2, 3, 4, and 5 for people who don't want to write multiple personal statements, which I totally understand and support. UW also has a short response, like when I mentioned the supplemental essays. So their supplemental essay is about community and talks about how families and communities help shape you into the person that you are. And they ask you just to describe where you come from. I mean, not like the geography, although you could, if that's particularly important, the region or the country that you come from. But they want you to talk about how you will add to the diversity of the UW. So people will write about their families, one student wrote about their neighborhood block. It was a really tight-knit block, and they celebrated all the holidays together because people's extended families were either out of town or they weren't close with their extended families. So this student wrote about their block. People can write about clubs, anything that just shows that you're a person who likes other people and appreciates people who are different from you and learning from others who are different from you. And that is no more than 300 words. So just about half the length of the Common App essay. This is just a slide I just stick in there just because I don't know, I don't know why. I just think it's kind of interesting. So just to show you, okay, what do people write about? The vast majority of people answer that first question where the Common App asks you to write about your background or identity, interest, or talent. Some people write it about 22% write about an accomplishment, 17% about a lesson or failure, that challenge question, what did you learn from that? Some people write about a problem solved, and 4% writing about an idea or a belief that was challenged. There is no benefit or disadvantage to writing about any of the prompts versus any of the others. So I just think, I just find this interesting, what people choose. Okay, so about 6 years ago, There was a student, her name's Brittany, and I don't remember her last name, and she wrote an essay about Costco. And so I'd like to include, like to talk about her a little bit because Costco's in our backyard. And also because I think it drives home the point that you can really write about anything. So you wouldn't think that writing about Costco would be a particularly great essay choice. But what she did, and I mean, if you're interested, you could just Google Brittany Costco college essay, and then I'm sure it'll come up right away. She talked about all the bounty of foods and items on the shelves at Costco and how she learned about the world by going to Costco with her parents. So she she also brings in her varied interests and kind of compares her varied interests to the breadth of all the like all the things that you can get at Costco, everything from, batteries to, Grana Padano to like, shampoo, like anything. So it, admissions officers loved it, and she got into a lot of very selective schools. So that's also a plug for just kind of thinking outside the box and being not being afraid to take a risk and just being creative. Okay, so that's a nice segue into almost anything goes. So when you want to, talk about experiences, you can just define it really broadly, like just cast a very wide net. So it could be like a meeting with an influential person, or just a news story that you read and you were, outraged, or some video you saw on TikTok and you just couldn't believe it. And then that led you to get involved in some sort of activism. And now you hold a leadership position all because of this TikTok video. Like a family event or family tradition that maybe, I mean, I'm just making these things up, obviously, but like, maybe you used to be embarrassed because your family, like you thought they were weird or at least different from other people's families. And especially when you're young, very few people want to be different. But maybe as you're getting older, you're realizing not only is it okay to be different, but it's great. And so maybe you've had a shift in thinking, going back to kind of the beginning of this presentation where I was talking about trying to show growth and change and development. So maybe you now talk about, your parents wanted you to take Mandarin lessons, and that was the last thing that you wanted to do. And they forced you to do it and you hated it. And now you're starting to realize like how cool it is. And you're connecting with that part of your heritage. A weakness or a challenge, you don't need to be afraid that because you write about something that makes you vulnerable, that they're going to be like, oh my God, we don't want this kid because, they said that they're not good. They lack confidence, or it's fine to talk about things that you feel like you need or want to work on. The key with doing that is that you're actually showing some sort of growth and some sort of commitment to work to like some sort of initiative and commitment to working on that, to making yourself a better person. And then something that might be insignificant to someone else but had particular meaning to you. I worked with someone several years ago who wrote about, I don't think any students probably know who Donny Osmond is, but she had like a real crush on Donny Osmond, who was like a 1980s heartthrob, 70s, God, I don't even know. And she wrote about how he inspired her to audition for American Idol. And she didn't make it, but she wrote about that whole process and kind of finding the courage to put herself out there. Okay, so now you've got a topic, you figured out what you're going to write about. Now, what do you do with it? So I touched on theme earlier in this conversation, and your theme there's no end to potential themes. So overcoming adversity, hard work, respect for differences, confronting fears, mistakes made or mistakes avoided because you were, paying attention, persistence, curiosity, whatever it is. You want to, figure out what it is that you want to convey. And then you find a story about your life that can help illustrate that. The next step is to create an outline for how you're going to actually tell that story. You want to brainstorm anecdotes as a way to begin your essay, because unlike in school, you don't have a topic sentence. You want to just kind of throw the reader right in. It's like a screenplay. You want to just throw them right in to the telling of your story and engage them, because you have to think like they're reading hundreds, if not thousands of essays, and it can get pretty boring. So you really want to engage them. And then create a writing schedule to keep yourself on track. When I work with students, I like to meet them. I kind of the way I structure working one-on-one with students is 4 1-hour sessions, and I like to schedule them 1 week apart so that you maintain momentum. So if you're doing this on your own, I highly recommend not starting your essay and then putting it away for 2 months and then picking it back up, because you have no momentum there. So try and keep yourself to a schedule. Okay, so just a little bit more about how to do this. So you brainstorm your topics, you identify the themes, and say choose your top 3 ideas. It's not a science. If you have 4 that you love, that's totally fine. And then kind of map out each idea, what feels most engaging, like most substantial. Substantial is really important, because even though I said 650 words, on one hand is not a lot to convey all the things that you need to convey, but you do have to be able to write 650 words. So it has to be a topic that you feel is important enough to you that you're energized to actually stick with it and to write something meaningful. And you want it to be something that makes you unique. Ideally, so if your best friend is reading 10 essays and none of these essays have names that the author's names on them, you want your friend to know, like, oh, I know who wrote that one. So it's like, that's how you know that you're actually writing about something that is important and really, kind of shows who you are as a person, as, in contrast to, oh gosh, anyone could have written this essay. The next step is to, back to the anecdotes, to brainstorm anecdotal leads and ways to start your essay by showing, not telling. And what I mean by that is when I mentioned it's like a screenplay or like the opening scenes to a movie. So you want to use descriptive verbs. You want to, tell a story and not, you want to, it's like when you're starting to read a book, how sometimes you'll pick up a book and you're like, am I going to like this? And you read the first paragraph. And by the end of the first paragraph, you can tell if it's going to engage you or not. So you want the essay to be really engaging. And the best way to do that is by just starting in with an anecdote, with a short little story that is going to illustrate the theme of your essay. And then you write your opening paragraph, then take a couple of days off, write your body paragraphs, write the end. So the beginning and the end are often really the trickiest part, because, for obvious reasons. The beginning, you really have to just hook the reader, and the end, you really have to be like, wait, did I say anything meaningful here? And then you just keep revising until you have something that you feel proud of. Okay, this is something I always tell my kids, my biological kids, but the students I work with as well. If something is optional, you do it anyway. For some annoying reason, some colleges will offer you an optional essay, which is, it's got to be a trick. So you should do it. You should always, if they're offering you the chance to tell them more about yourself, take them up on that opportunity, and don't just skip it because you're tired of writing essays. Okay, another tip, don't be trite. So there are a couple of topics when I said, like, oh, you can write about almost anything. Well, there are some things you can write about it, but at least you need to do it in a different way. So no, you can't write about going on a trip to a poor country and then realizing how blessed and fortunate you are. That's I mean, of course, yes, it's true. Yes, you would realize that, but there's absolutely nothing interesting or surprising about that, because that would happen to anyone. So when you're writing, when you're choosing a topic, you want to think, am I saying something here that's a little bit surprising? It doesn't need to be like some huge shock, but you want it to be, you want to have some sort of realization in it that is interesting and compelling. And you don't get that from something like, oh, I saw all these people who don't have access to all the things that I do, and it made me really grateful for my life. So you really just want to steer clear of cliches. I strongly, I think my best tip, strongly recommend start working on your essay over the summer. You would be surprised at the number of students I get who contact me in October when they wake up and realize that they have to write a college essay, say for an early decision or early action deadline, which is typically November 1st. Another important thing to keep in mind is that students who are applying to UW has a really early deadline, way earlier than most schools. It's November 15th. It's not early action or early decision. It's just, that's their deadline. So if you miss that, you're out of luck. The University of California system, the UC system, they have a November 30th deadline. Most schools are right around the first week of January, but those two biggies are in November. Okay, a little bit about me. I have 3 kids of my own. A son who graduated from Garfield, who just wrapped up his second year at Yale. A senior at Roosevelt who's going to be attending Wash U in St. Louis, and a daughter who's a sophomore. I love helping students apply to all sorts of colleges. I've worked with students who've gotten into extremely selective schools, and I love working with students who are applying to colleges that have acceptance rates of 75, 80, 90%, just as much. I have written a popular science nonfiction book about genetics and pregnancy. I've written for, I used to be a staff writer for Time Magazine, and I currently, my day job is I am a writer. I'm a storyteller at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center, where I write about patient narratives. You have my email because you all emailed me. And the link below is to, I think, last year's Zoom presentation, but I'm recording this. So assuming that everything goes well, I can send it out in case you want to reference that. The last thing is the services that I offer. So I do one-on-one coaching. I used to do group, not lessons, but group sessions. And I found that it just didn't work as well because everyone has really specific needs and questions. So now I just work one-on-one with students. And it's $1,000 for 4 hours of support, which I have found in the vast majority of situations is what students need to make it, from they don't know what they're writing about to having a polished essay that's ready to submit. So I have pretty high expectations of students, and I expect them to do work on their own time, and I explain to them that their parents are paying a lot of money for this. So there are some students who, and parents know if their students fall into this category, who just need me to hang out with them while they're writing, but it's a lot more cost effective if your student or if you are the student, if you do the work that we agree upon in between the sessions. And so, if you follow this plan, when we meet once a week, within 3 to 4 weeks, you have an essay that you're proud of and that you're ready to submit. If money is an issue, I offer reduced rates. Just contact me about that. And that's the end of the presentation, but I will, I'll open it up to, I'm gonna just haven't been looking at the meeting chat. So I'll see if any, let me see. Oh yeah, there are questions. Okay, let me start with the questions in the chat, and then anyone else who has questions, feel free to ask them. So okay, one question. For the stories, examples, accomplishments for the essays, how recent should those stories, examples, accomplishments be? It should be something in high school. So sometimes people will want to write about a really meaningful trip or experience that they had in middle school, and they really, you really want it to be sometime between 9th and 11th grade, so you can keep it pretty recent. Could you use that prompt for prompt 7 on Common App? That's a question from Cameron. I'm not sure which prompt you're referring to, but if you want to pop on your audio. Oh, okay. Then it says, could you use the same essay for the UW essay and Common App essay prompt number 7? Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, that's what I was, let me just go back here to that UW page. Wait. Let's see here. Okay, here. Yeah, so it most closely intersects with 2, 3, 4, and 5, but yes, you can, 7 is write about whatever you want on the Common App. So yes, you can answer, you can write your initial essay answering the UW prompt, and then yes, certainly submit that. It's just, in most cases, you'll find that it will fit into 2, 3, 4, or 5. So you'll actually have a specific prompt to choose when on the Common App. But if you don't, it's totally fine. Yes, you can answer. You can use it for number 7.
And that experience, it has to be like from high school?
Yeah, it should be from high school. I mean,
Okay,
and
so I couldn't use,
I can't
I
say
can't,
always. I mean, but unless there's something really super compelling and a really good reason to write about something from before high school, they want to hear about high school.
okay.
Is 650 words a strict cutoff? No, you cannot write 651. It won't even let you put it into, so you write your essay. Here's like another, this is not even a tip. This is a do not do this. Do not write your essay in the Common App on the website. Like, never do that. Write it in a Google Doc, write it in a Word doc, and then you'll copy and paste it into the Common App when you're 100% sure that it is the best that it can be, that it's been proofread a million times, and that it sounds exactly the way you want it to sound. But it won't let you put in 651 words. So it has to be 650. Can you talk more about the California schools essay process? I believe they are shorter and several. Yes, I can do that. So University of California schools, and I really should add, thank you, MC, for asking about that. I should add a slide about that. So the UC schools have a completely separate application. It's not Common App, it's not Coalition, it's University of California system, very similar to the Cal State system, but although Cal State does not require any essays at all, so students applying to Cal Poly, there's no essay. But University of California schools, there's not only one essay, there are 4 essays. So there are, they call them PIQs, personal insight questions, and they are 4 questions that you choose from 8 prompts. So they give you 8 prompts, and the 4 that appeal to you the most, you answer. And they can't exceed more than 350 words. As with the Common App, it'll cut you off, so you can't stick in 352 words. And they're like little mini stories. So in some ways they're super, super challenging to write because you have to tell a complete story in 350 words. But I really like that application because I think because they have 4 different essays, they get a fuller picture of the students who are applying there. And especially now that they're not looking at standardized tests, those essays are super, super important because all they're looking at are your GPA They don't take teacher recommendations, so nor does UW. So they're not looking at recs, they're looking at your grades, at the courses you took, and at your essays and at your extracurriculars. So with those four things, the essays are super important. Are UBC and other Canadian schools part of Common App schools? No, they are not. It's always possible things can change from year to year, but no, they're currently not. UBC has its own application. Those are all the questions that were in the chat. Does anyone else have any additional questions to stick in the chat, or to just come on and ask what you want?
What type of thing might the or prompt or essay would UBC ask for? Let me know.
I off the bat, I honestly I don't remember. I did have one student apply there last year. They, if I'm recalling correctly, they want you to know what school you're applying to, like what your major is, and depending upon what school or what major you're applying to, they have different essay questions. Don't hold me to that, but I think that is the situation with them. Anyone else? Is there a good website or resource with sample college essays to look at for inspiration? Is there a good website or resource with sample college essays? There are lots of books out there that you could get at the library. There are every year, Ron Lieber at the New York Times publishes some essays about finances from students, and I always find them super, super interesting. You can just Google, there's like no shortage. Sometimes on YouTube, people will read their college essays that, they'll say like, this essay got me into, University of Michigan, or they'll post it. There's no shortage. I don't have one specific resource to recommend because there are so many. Let me see what else. How would you rate all the aspects of a typical college application in terms of importance for acceptance? I think that the most important thing is GPA and course selection. So I think that's the number one thing. And then after that, it really depends on the school. Schools have different, you may have heard, institutional priorities. So different schools value different things. Some schools value very well-rounded students. Some schools value students who have developed an interest or a skill or a talent in one particular area. Sometimes that's called like pointy students versus well-rounded. Some schools don't really even care about extracurriculars. They just care about how well you did it in high school, and they want to see if you can write. So they're interested in your essay. Some schools place a lot of emphasis on teacher recommendations. Obviously not the UC schools, not UW. Some public schools do take recommendations, though, do take teacher recommendations. Like University of Michigan does take teacher recommendations. So it's hard to say overall because a lot of schools have different priorities. But I do think that coursework and GPA is like the first thing that they look at. If you didn't do very well, you're not going to be as appealing a candidate for them. So and again, because I'm not just saying this because I'm an essay coach, but the essays are really important now, like even more important, just because there are fewer other factors that are being being considered, because there's very, very few schools still for this upcoming admission cycle that are requiring, I think University of Florida does, UNC, I don't actually know where they landed. They were going to require it, and then they walked that back. They were going to require it last year, SAT or ACT scores, and then they walked that back. They may require it for this year. MIT very famously decided for this upcoming year, the year that for which you will be applying, they are requiring standardized tests again, but most schools are still have either completely done away with them or are test optional. So as a result, the essays become more important. The essays are also really the only part of the application objectively where you get to show who you are as a person. You can argue that the extracurriculars do a pretty good job of demonstrating that as well. But for the most part, you really get to show like what makes you tick through the essays, not, through your grade, like your grades are your grades, your courses are your courses, and lots of other people take those, get those same grades, have those same courses. But your essay is something that's unique to you. When working one-on-one with students, do you require them to meet in 4 consecutive weeks, or could they be broken up? Oh yeah, they can. I mean, I know I sound a little bit like a dictator, but they can be broken up and people go on vacation during the summer. I just like to keep it moving because I think that it works best for students because, you have that momentum. So it's like, it's like if you start reading a book and you get really into the book and then you put it down for 2 weeks and then you have to kind of go back and like reread a chapter so you catch up again. But yeah, it's flexible. It's whatever a student and that student's family wants. Are there any unique characteristics to applying to colleges in the Southeast? Well, I mean, colleges in the Southeast are not a monolith, so I can't. I know this sounds like a cop out, but I can't really answer that. I mean, Duke is very different from East Carolina University. I'm from North Carolina. So, what Duke is looking for is very different from what ECU is looking for. So I don't have a good answer for that, but I do work with a lot of students who apply to college in the Southeast. So, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the requirements and kind of what works there. Those are all the questions. Anyone have any additional anything? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for attending, and I will, as I mentioned, I'll follow up with the recording, assuming it worked. And you all have my email, so feel free to get in touch if I can be of any help, or if you have any further questions. Thank you.